It works.
Today is Thursday, July 14th, 2005, and I will be interviewing oral history of Dora Paul. May I have your name, please?
I am Dora Paul.
Date of birth?
I was born long ago.
Your high school?
I went to high school in New York City. It was the Calhoun School, which in those days was on 92nd Street. And at that time there was a movie at the house on 92nd Street. That was on the east side and we were on the west side. And ironically, after I got married and left New York, they built a new school diagonally across from where I used to live. And it's still there.
And your college, university?
I went to Radcliffe College, and then I went to Columbia University, and always in English lit, and then I got married.
And your profession, current or past?
I have been a volunteer professional, so to speak, ever since I've been married, and a mother and a wife, etc.
And your spouse's name?
And my husband's name is Gerald Paul, and you interviewed him previously.
Right. And your children's names?
And we have two daughters, Eloise Paul, who lives here in town and was married last year to Bill Lee, and who came with a wonderful rabbit. And the other daughter is Allison Paul, and she's been married about 17 years, whoops, and they live in Sleepy Hollow, where promptly on Halloween, every year the Headless Horseman rides.
Oh, wow.
And they have two children, Ben, who is 16 and a half, and Melanie, who is 13.
And the country of origin of your family?
I was born in Mannheim, Germany. My mother's family had been living in Mannheim since sometime in the middle of the 19th century. For that, like most Jews, they came from a small town. The four original Siegels came from a small town called Oevikheim. And my father's family lived also in the area, and my father was born in a town called Weinheim, and then they moved to Landenburg. And interestingly enough, my father went to Israel in 1911, which was a disappointment to him, I'm afraid. And the only place he could stay was in a Protestant hospice.
I'm going to skip all of the Indianapolis area, but there are a couple of questions I'd like to ask you. Did you have any experience during the Depression, you or your family?
No, because we were in Germany.
You were in Germany during
I wasn't born there.
Okay. And what was the experience, other than what your father's experience to Israel, was with the Zionist establishment of the State of Israel? How did you...
Well, none. Interestingly enough, I went to a Reformed Sunday school in New York, and I probably was the only rabbi in New York, Rabbi Schachtel, who was anti-Zionist, and believe me, I don't know why. So vis-a-vis Zionism, I really can't say anything about my parents' stance. They certainly were pro-Zionist, I imagine, as a young man. In Germany, my father, who was active in those days in more radical organizations, were probably involved. I didn't go to school very much in Germany because we were never there, but the school I went to was the Jewish school, and I remember it was always a big celebration when somebody's parents made Aliyah.
What do you think it means to be an American Jew? Which American or Jew is more important to you? Have you always felt that way?
That's really a question that's far too philosophical for me to answer this quickly. And so I stand behind what amendment? The fifth?
Fifth? Whatever. And what does your Jewish identity mean to you, and how do you best express it?
Well, I know I'm a Jew. We go to, not often enough, to services. I'm active, or have been, in Jewish causes and organizations. Sometimes I'm positive and sometimes I'm negative about assimilation and social integration.
If you could change one thing about the Indianapolis Jewish community, what would it be and why?
I know I thought about this, and I really don't have any answer for that either.
What has been your involvement with the Jewish Federation of Greater Indianapolis?
Well, I've been, I should say, quite involved. I was for, I don't know how many years actually, on the executive board of the Federation, over 10 years, and thereafter for several years just on the regular board. That was all under Frank Newman. Things were run very differently in those days, like there were no minutes published. And no, there weren't. It was interesting, and as soon as we could afford to, we went to the big gifts dinners, and that was always very exciting. I mean, it was a long time ago, the first time I was in a room when $1 million was raised, $1 million was raised, which in those days, about 20 years ago, was real money. Now it's just nothing. I will say that. So I was involved on the board of the Federation. Actually, it was, I think, almost Robert Ephraimson who got me into this. And first when I met him, I thought, well, here's somebody, he and I come from totally different spectrum, or spectra, whatever. And the interesting thing was, eventually, and sometimes there would be only 2 dissenting votes, and guess who? Robert and I. It was a very interesting experience. And I've also been chairman of the Women's Division Fund Drive, and I've been president of the women's clubs. So I would say I've been quite involved with the Federation, and I am currently on the endowment committee.
What role do you think the Federation plays in the Jewish community, and what are its greatest strengths and weaknesses?
I think the Federation plays sort of an umbrella role, since it's under the Federation's umbrella that all the congregations, or members of the congregations, fall. Jews are difficult people. There were 2 years when there was a community-wide sort of school on Jewish education, which actually was, while Allison was still here, we would go. And that didn't last that long because I think each congregation or each rabbi felt they wanted their congregants in their building, so that fell apart. So it's not a weakness of the Federation, but I think it's a weakness of the Jewish community.
In terms of your experience on the board, describe your path to involvement in leadership, and go as far back as you can. I think you just said some of that already. And what were your motivations for becoming a leader?
It just happened. I just always sort of fell into it. Other than the Federation and the women's, I forgot what it was called.
Well, the Women's Division.
Yeah. On the Federation, other than being on the board, I was not in any leadership position. I was for 6 years on the board of Hooverwood, now being followed by Gerald, and I was for 6 years and at some time an officer of the Temple. So I think that's a fair amount of Jewish involvement. And currently I'm really more into the arts.
Do you have a philosophy of leadership to which you ascribe?
Well, I think a good leader, and I've tried to do this, even though I was once long ago in a tea group, and I was asked to be the chairman, and a girl told me afterwards I was simply horrified that they picked you because I thought you would do nothing but talk, and I was so surprised because you did nothing but listen. So I think a good leader has to have a point of view, but should not, certainly not at the beginning of a discussion, express it, because that way you close the discussion up. I think if you let things happen, it happens. For instance, just now I was head of the Idle Jorg Gala. And we started out, had a wonderful, an extraordinary committee and a good co-chairman. We started out with one set of ideas. And as it evolved, it turned out to be something totally different, which I thought was much better. And that's because we each expressed ideas, and it was really an interesting and rewarding process. And I think a very successful event.
Who were your role models as you traveled up the leadership ladder?
Well, one of my role models in Council of Jewish Women, I guess I forgot to mention, that's the first organization I joined. Actually, Marilyn Glick came and said, I want you to join Council and be my publicity co-chairman. And then I did publicity for Council for I don't know how many years. And Ellen Lorch sort of always preceded me. And I became a vice president of Council under her. But that I was on 14 years on that board. And when I could figure out what every person was going to say on every situation or every issue, I decided it was time to move on. So I never became chairman of Council, even though I was under Ellen and I admired her greatly.
What were the big issues of the Jewish community during your time in a leadership position?
During a time in the leadership position, I can't even remember that far back. Well, one issue, of course, was the building of this building and the buying of this campus, which had a few little frictions involved in it, which I will not go into. So that was an issue while I was active on the board.
And what accomplishment brought you the most pride as a leader of the Indianapolis Jewish community?
Yeah, I thought about that too. Obviously raising a lot of money while I was chairman of the women's division.
Right.
Another very divisive issue while I was active was the Jewish Day School. And a lot of people felt that this should not be under the Federation aegis because it was not totally representative of the whole Jewish community, and some of us felt the Federation should be all-inclusive. And again, this was an issue where Robert Ephraimson and I were on the same side. So I think that was the most disturbing event while I was active in the Federation.
What changes have you seen in the needs of the community?
Well, of course, one big change has been the influx of the Russians. That has been a change both, I think, for the better and has had difficulty for reasons that are beyond me, because I too was thrown into, and my parents, into a milieu where we did not know the language, and I would say the bulk of the Russians had had a good education, just as good as the German refugees who came here, who at that point, I guess, other than the founding fathers, were the most educated group of refugees to ever come en masse to these here shores, and instigated a lot of changes in our American way of life. But I think the influx of the Russians has also presented problems, since many did not learn the language. Another major crisis was when we decided we were all refugees once, when we went to help the Vietnamese refugees and other Asian refugees who also had to be acculturated, some of them. So I think those were some of the difficulties. I think the divisiveness caused by the Hebrew Day School was another major problem.
As the Federation has just concluded its 100th anniversary, what do you see as its biggest success, and what do you see as its biggest challenge for the future?
Well, I think this institution that we're in right now has been a great success, because I come here and it truly is multicultural. So I think in one sense this represents the best of all possible worlds. I really believe so. I think the whole community partakes of this. Even if it's the Jewish Community Center, I don't have the figures. I would imagine at least 40% of the membership is not Jewish. They're not necessarily Caucasian. And I'm not in the know that there's not been any major crisis involved in that. And I think that's the biggest success.
I
And
think-
the biggest challenge, well, you know, life for Jews is always difficult, even if we think it isn't.
I think the last time I heard the non-Jewish membership is about 33%.
Yes, I was close.
So you were close. Is there anything else about your experiences as you came into the Indianapolis community that you would like to share?
Yeah. I was married and I came here, and a distant relative of Gerald's was Clarence Ephraimson and his wife Ibbot. And I met them a few weeks after I came here, and Ibbot said, "You're going to come with me to Central State Hospital as a volunteer." Well, that was interesting. I had never been in a mental hospital, had no intention of going to one. By golly, I went there and we brought books to the wards. We would be locked open and then they would lock the door behind us while we were in there. And it was an interesting experience, which I did for about 2 years. So my volunteer career in Indianapolis started at Central State Hospital, which is no longer there. And stopped when I got very pregnant. I thought perhaps this was not the place to go. But shortly after that, through the Council of Jewish Women, we did a travel program at Central State, and I chaired that for many years. And that was an extremely rewarding and also interesting experience, and I really think we did help, or at least entertain and bring out of themselves some of the residents, who were, of course, the ones that had more or less free access to the grounds. It wasn't quite like when we were in the locked wards.
Right.
So I would say that was one of my more rewarding volunteer experiences in Indianapolis.
You know, you've taken me back a while, and I think you've done a remarkable job. So if that's the last thing you want to share, then I think the interview is over.
All right,
And I thank you very much, Dorit.
it's been a pleasure. Okay.